very easily. And I think that's the kind of bare bones of why XTM is used for DITA on its own. But when you combine the two in terms of an integrated process, it becomes even more powerful.
So enough about us. Let's talk about who we're talking about today. So we named the title of this webinar Translation for the Fortune 5 Million. And just talking a little bit about who that is targeting, those are the organizations that are, below that, that huge enterprise, the Fortune 500, who are growing. They're stable organizations. They're looking to expand in other markets. They're the organizations which are building the next century of productivity. So we view these as aspirational companies, but companies that probably don't have your huge budgets that you see in the enterprise. So, where this leaves these organizations is that growing that aspiration, there's big plans. We're trying to become more globalized. We're trying to open up new markets, but you probably don't have the style and the scale of budget that you'd see in something which is going to be, a multi-billion-dollar company. So looking at this, what are these organizations going to do if they can't afford the top tier, six-figure style technology? Well, oftentimes the lack of these budgets means that they stay in legacy publishing tools. And these tools, they don't have any reuse. That means that you're translating everything because there's no translation memory when they're going through the translation process. And you're stuck with a manual publishing process at the end of it. The result of these things is going to be a very high cost when you're looking at the amount of content you can put out in a particular translated or localized set. So let's actually take a look down through what that cost is. So why don't you go ahead with this, Dominic?
Yeah, of course. So having spent a few years in the translation sector as a translation provider myself, there are some things that, what does it cost, as Patrick was saying. So we were looking at, when we were building this webinar, trying to identify how can we show you on average what we can see a traditional approach for translating content would be. So if we look at the words per page and the word cost and the desktop publishing costs, we can see that there probably is about, let's say, 250 words on a page. And we come to the conclusion that if you're paying an individual translator, then your average cost per word is about 16 cents, per word. And desktop publishing can range between 25% of that, or maybe even more. So depending on the file format and the complexity of it, that may even cost even more. So we try to be quite conservative with what we have here because we want to give you a realistic picture. So when we look then at the next slide, which kind of gives you a bit more detail, you can see that so for 250 words per page at 16 cents, and with the desktop publishing at 1.25, you're paying about $100 per page. Okay, so $100 per page.
I want to just mention one thing real quick here. So we had been a little bit concerned that the 16 cents per page was maybe on the higher end. I sent out some questions to some colleagues, and this actually came back being one of the lower figures I got back. So I actually think that's it may be that the smaller batches are, as we were saying, higher cost per word. But I'm not concerned about that number anymore. I think that's pretty accurate.
You know what? I think if we look at the range of languages as well, so if you're looking at French and German, Italian, common ones, where you have lots of translators, that rate might be quite okay. But then if you're looking at something like Arabic, or if you're looking at something like Thai, or maybe something that's more complicated, then that rate would actually shoot up. So you were talking nearly double what we're seeing here. So, you're right, Patrick. Trying to be conservative because we want to make sure that the message we're giving across is realistic, as close as we can be, right?
Yep. So anyways, sorry to interrupt you there. Let's keep going.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. So then, if we take the example of a manual, and roughly we were talking about manuals being, about 500 pages in length, and we look at one manual and we look at one target language. So a cost for translation is about $50,000 for one book. Now, most small to medium-sized companies are going to have more than one product and therefore more than one manual, even have more than one manual for one product. So that's the case we looked at. So on average, we think that if someone was looking at going into Europe, they're probably talking maybe one or two different languages. So we looked at 5 languages with 5 manuals, and we came with a cost which is $100 times by 500 pages in the manual times by 5 languages, and we got the $1,250,000 budget. So that's what you're looking at spending or are spending, but maybe maybe you're unable to track it all at the moment. So these traditional methods, they pretty much leave you in a situation where you only translate what you need to. And I think, Patrick, you had a great way of saying that, didn't you? So it's you do what you can with what you can, right, or something like that?
Well, so I think the thing to take away from this, why are we spending so much time going through the cost of this before we show the integration, is because this really creates a problem, and it's that in today's day and age, just shipping a manual with a product isn't enough. It's going to check the box. It's going to allow you to enter the marketplace. It's going to be expensive because we saw that another language or another product was going to run us up another $250,000 just to have the minimum viable manual at 500 pages to get into a new marketplace. But the reality is that to win, especially in the age of the internet, especially in a knowledge-based economy, organizations really have to have more than a manual. They've got to have online training and educational content. There's got to be tutorials. There's got to be best practices. There's got to be questions and answers. And there's got to be little simple how-tos as well. Now, a lot of this content is reused content. So you may find that if you have 500 pages in a manual, that you start splitting those down into different products, which are consumed in different ways. So maybe all of your how-tos are in the manual, but they're not consumable in a manual. They're not something that's really going to help somebody in their quick point of need. So if you're going through a traditional process and you're using maybe, say, the most traditional authoring environment, Microsoft Word, the ability to split down and reuse that content just isn't there. It's not available. So you're not providing value to your customer. And this has really big implications because when shoppers are uninformed, they don't buy. And when customers are uneducated, they're expensive for our support organizations and they're unhappy. And I think looking at this is something that we're really starting to see. We're starting to see a change in the tone in the marketplace here. So we didn't want to just focus on cost reduction in this webinar. We wanted to talk about the capability that we're adding here. We want to talk about how going through and having an efficient, low-cost ability to reuse, re-leverage, and publish more targeted and high-value content because you're not spending as much on translation gives you the ability to be more successful from an expansion in a new marketplace, gives you the ability to reduce support costs and have happier customers. So now let's take a look at how we actually do that. Well, I think it's pretty simple. You bring the cost down, and this allows you to do more. So if we look at the cost, let's kind of break that equation down again. So we basically have words times the cost per word times desktop publishing. So as we were, kind of saying before, the cost per word is, maybe not going to be something you can really control. It's going to change based on the different language you're going to. It's going to change based on your total volume, but not that much. So we're going to focus on bringing down the number of words we're translating and trying to do something about desktop publishing. So first of all, we reduce the number of words. This is talking about the combination of reuse, which would be done in easyDITA. So that's driving multiple different pieces of content from the same source, re-leveraging, creating more value, and then translation memory and XTM. So, having those fuzzy matches, having the ability to re-leverage things at the string level to not be retranslating content that we put through that process in the past. And then since we're using an automated publishing process, we're eliminating desktop publishing. So anybody here who's familiar with the DITA paradigm of the world knows that once you get to a strong structured XML process, you're quite literally taking desktop publishing out of the equation. So you can take this all back into your house, into your shop, and you can run this from an automated perspective. And this is going to completely eliminate this cost. So looking at this, so there was the values I was talking about before: reduce the number of words, translation memory, content reuse, eliminate desktop publishing, automated multilingual publishing. What can we expect to see the change here? So we're saying an 80% reduction in words and no desktop publishing. So the 80% actually, it sounds like a big percentage, but it might be conservative in some situations. Let's remember that once you translate a manual once, those strings are stored in translation memory. And also, once you translate a topic or a task or a block of content once, if that's used in other things, so you take and you build small how-tos, or you have learning and training content that's derived from the same content in the manual, that's going to give you 50% reuse right there. So you can reduce your number of words when you're looking at the amount of output dramatically just by having simple reuse. So now what we've done here is we've taken the number of words, cut it down by 80%, we've eliminated desktop publishing, and now we're seeing that our cost of translation, probably conservatively, is about $8 per page. So at $8 per page, just think about how much more value you can add for your customer, for your prospect, for your sales team, for all those different people that need that content so people are educated, willing to buy, and happy customers. So now just rolling that up, we're looking at about $4,000 for a manual. So it's a big, big difference.
I think, Patrick, is also quite interesting when you think about your go-to-market strategy. As a Fortune 5 million company, you may think, well, before we look at the market, what products will fit that market? And then you think, okay, well, which ones can we afford to translate? And based on traditional figures, you may have to wait and pick one that might do well in traditional markets or your local market in foreign markets, when realistically, you could be doing more for less. And you could be providing the same level of experience, user experience, by going into that market with multiple products at the same time. When you have a solution that allows you to leverage and reuse, maybe a more advanced way of doing it, like easyDITA and XTM.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And here's kind of the finalization of this before we get into the demo, is that this type of technology to allow an organization to be this agile, to be this effective in the past, was going to cost, no matter how big you were, in the six figures. You were going to be paying a lot of money for this because your traditional enterprise CCMS and translation products were very expensive. So they're really things that were reserved only for large organizations, large enterprises. But by bringing two cloud solutions together and scaling based on the size of the organization, if you're a small organization with 3 authors going to 3 different languages and you're 10,000 pages of content, which is well below those 5 manuals and 5 that's source pages, by the way, that's not translated pages. 5 manuals, 5 languages, and 500 pages, you're looking at a cost that's going to be probably around this number we have in here. So that's the literal list pricing for all of that. So you may have modules or something like that bring that up or down a little bit. But that's a very, very affordable figure for any organization that's looking to start going to an internationalization sales philosophy.
I think, Patrick, also probably over the last maybe 6-7 years, technology that's emerged on the market that's allowed people to get access to this type of technology that otherwise would be totally inaccessible is cloud and the internet.
Yep.
Now you don't have to invest in the hardware, you don't have to invest in the IT infrastructure, and this allows then these small to medium size, or even the FTSE 5 million companies that aren't quite at the top 3 in their market. They can access the same type of technology that otherwise they couldn't.
Right. This is an ability to compete. So let's take a look at it now.
Yeah.
All right. So drop that down. All right. So we're taking a quick look at easyDITA here. I'm going to kind of skip over the major sections of the product. Those of you who've used easyDITA in the past and are not currently beta customers, you will notice that our interface has been redesigned pretty significantly. So we're actually looking at what we're referring to as the easyDITA 2016. We're going to have a full demo webinar on the system fairly soon, so probably in the next couple of months, maybe even as few as the next month to really go through this in detail. But today we're just going to focus on the localization aspects. So I'm coming in here and I'm going to pop open my map, and the DITA people will recognize our garage tasks and concepts from the DITA Open Toolkit. So this is some good old classic content. I'm now going to jump into our localization and start a new localization job. And I'm selecting the XTM package and clicking go. So once this loads up for me, I'm just going to give the project a name. And then I'm going to pick a target language. So we'll just do German right now. We could add as many of these as we want. For simplicity, we'll just do one. And that's going to start that job up in easyDITA. So now once we've got the job in easyDITA, we're going to want to send it over to XTM. So I'm going to click this Send Project to XTM. That's going to take just a second here. Once this gets sent over, this will refresh for us. And we'll now see that we've got the XTM project editor is in a tab here. So now this is actually just going to be loading up the XTM interface. So you can see we've got that workflow in there. And it's got all the different files that we sent. So I'm going to go ahead and, still being analyzed. All right. So we'll just give it a second. All right, ready to go. Okay, so we got our analysis done. Now we want to set up our different individuals. So I'm assigning Dominic to each of these files.
Thank you, Patrick. I might be a little bit more expensive than $16.16 per word, though. So your budget has to be a bit bigger for me.
Well, even with the Google Translate that we're going to use?
Oh, well, you weren't supposed to know that. Yeah, a lot of people have started using MT and post-editing now for topics and for content. Even if you are reducing the volume you're sending, the amount of content that you need sometimes to support a market is often even bigger, and virtually impossible to translate even by the largest players in the market. So we enable a lot of translation, memory reuse, and so on and so forth. So I'm just going to click, there it is. So hopefully everyone should be seeing my screen now. Is that all clear to everyone? Patrick, is that clear?
I'm not seeing it yet. Maybe you got to click the show button. It's still waiting for you to load up.
Oh, okay, hold on a second.
There you go. Much better.
Cool.
We're seeing.
Great stuff.
Yep, good. So XTM, all right, you should be good to go.
Great stuff, great stuff. Nice handover. So basically what you're seeing at the moment is the XTM project manager list. So I'm logged in as administrator, so I can see all my projects. So content that's been pushed through from easyDITA is being created in XTM. So you can see here, look, new example, this is a test customer we're using. the target language, the date it's created. Also, you can set XTM up to set a default due date and the status of the whole project. If I hover over the little eye icon, you can see a little bit more information. So at the moment it's saying no Google machine translation, but I will be changing that. It's showing me one target language, the number of files, 20, and it's also auto-calculating the price for me based on the suppliers I've selected. So when you have the content creation, you're pushing that content through, you want to scope a project and budget for a project, you can do that straight away. And what you will have seen from the easyDITA side is this. So basically the integration is very firm because it calls the API which shows the project editor. And from here you can update, change languages, confirm the status of a project. You can look at the what we call the metrics, and the metric shows you the translation memory reuse. So how much reuse am I getting from the translation memory that I'm storing on site here? So you can see that we have 3 steps in this process: to translate, correct, and review. And here we have done. There is 141 words that are done. Sorry, yes, and to be done there's 547. And you can see the progress update in real time. If you want to see where I'm getting that reuse from, if you can scroll down, you can see that this first file is almost completely done. This second file is almost completely done, but this third and this fourth, there might be some translation memory that I'm getting. So you can see automatically the reuse. Now, some people who aren't used to translation memory, who don't care about the metrics, they just want to see, well, what does that mean in terms of my progress? Well, here you go. You can very, very quickly see the leveraging that you're getting from the project straight away. Nice and simple. If I look at the files, all the DITA files are all here in XTM. And also, if I look at my groups, this allows me, if I had thousands and thousands of DITA topics, I could decide in XTM to come in here and create groups and say, I want to deliver these first 10 DITA files and then these another 10 DITA files back into the system. So you can break down and manage the vast amount of files from XTM. From basically managing all your content in topics and translate it really effectively in XTM. As I mentioned, the estimates and costs are already generated, so we don't need to cover that. But let's quickly look at the workflow. Now, XTM is a dynamic workflow technology, which means you can add, adjust, manipulate, change the workflow. You can change vendors and you can change suppliers or in mid-flow. And because all the assets are stored centrally, you never lose any progress. Okay, so what I'm going to do here to show you that is just click on this workflow due dates. Here's my workflow, but because we're doing a demonstration, I don't want to have to, Patrick, I don't want to have to go through and do everything, right? So I'm going to get rid of my correct, and I'm going to get rid of my review. Okay, so purpose of demonstration, I just want to have a translation step, right? So let's make it nice and simple, yeah? So here we go now. So I've now updated that. So you can see that the green box is around each one that started, and we can get cracking on the translation. Okay, so what happens now for the translator? Well, they get the email. All the email communication is managed inside XTM, so it notifies the linguist that there's a task. And if they click on their inbox, now I'm in as administrator, so I have lots of stuff I can see, but translators or linguists or suppliers would only have a list of tasks which are planned, active, and closed. So if I look at new example, and you can see here is some of the progress of the files here. I can see this role, and all I have to do is click on it. And once I click on it, you can start your translation process. Now, I didn't activate my Google MT, so just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to do that now. It takes literally a couple of seconds to do. There we go.
Hey Dominic,
New
also make
example.
sure you add the map to the. There was 2 files that for whatever reason I didn't select them, so you want to get those selected.
Oh, okay. Hold on a second then. Okay, so I just added that. So you can see here, I've just added my MT engine. Bear in mind now, you can leverage off lots of other translation memories too if you have them in the system, but we'll keep it simple. And then if I open up the new example and we look at the workflow, and these are already completed, I think. That's why they're marked off like this. So the DITA map, if I, let me just do this to double check. I think it may have already completed it for us. Yeah, you see, it's automatically finished those XML topics, Patrick, because they're already translated.
Okay.
So the mark is green. So we
My
can't
mistake.
allocate anyone.
My mistake.
Yeah, it's a nifty trick. You know, if you push content into XTM that's already been translated on a segment level, then we're going to say it's already done. You know, so you don't need to actually give it to anyone. So it's even faster. I've had clients who push content inside XTM, DITA topics and things like this, and when they realize it's already translated, they get it back in literally a couple of seconds, and it pushes it back in. That sometimes can happen. So there are all the projects already started. So I'm going to go back to my inbox now as a linguist, and I'm going to crack on now and have a look at some of these files. So you can see all these tasks I have here, and if I click on one of them, the XTM editor opens. I now have my Google MT. Thank you. I'm not a linguist. I do apologize for any linguists in the crowd, but I am going to do machine translation, and it's very simple. I just need to come in. I need to select the machine translation as I'm working, and the segments are updating, green, which are showing translation status, and this is updating for the project manager, so they're able to see exactly where the translator is at all times, and the progress is just carrying through like this. So I'm doing this translation very, very quickly for the purpose of the demonstration, and you will be able to see yourselves as well. So let's say that that's been translated, and now it's been done. I'm going to use the DITA Open Toolkit, and I'm going to generate a little preview as a linguist, because I want to see what am I actually translating. What does it look like? Is it you know, what part of the manual does it belong to? So if I click this XTM, if we just unblock that. So I'm going to have to do that again. Sorry about that. There we go. Just give it a second. It's what it's doing. It's going and getting the DITA Open Toolkit to generate the preview, and then the linguist can actually open up the topic, and they can see really quickly. If I just pull this over here, what this actually looks like. So here is what it looks like. I can now see the layout, the structure. I can see what was hyperlinks as well. So related to concepts, you can see that here. So that's fine. I'm happy with that translation. I can now complete that task, and they click finish. The QA in the system will run spell checks and things like this and terminology checks, and if it finds any warnings, it will just tell them. But for the purpose of the demonstration, we're going to move this on quickly, and there we go. So that's finished. It automatically opens up the next topic, and so on and so forth. So the linguist can go through, and they can translate topic by topic, and what XTM has done is it's taken the DITA map and it's put these files in the order based on that DITA map. So you can see that they're all here, right? So I'm not going to spend too much time doing too much translation. I'm going to do a few, and then I'm going to push it back to Patrick, because there are lots of other things in XTM that I could talk to you about, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about it afterwards, but for the purpose of this demonstration, we want to show the integration, how it works. So there we go. Just completed another file, and we'll do one more, and then that's it. What do you think, Patrick? Is that enough?
I think that's plenty.
Cool. Okay, so now, because I haven't finished everything, you can imagine in cases where you had to maybe, like, as a project manager or someone who's looking at the deadlines for a delivery, you're thinking, are we going to make the deadline? Well, XTM allows you to change the workflow very, very quickly. So I can come in here and I can just complete the workflows, or I can change the linguist if I need to, and we can carry on. So I'm just going to do this very quickly, just go through all these files just like this. And there we go. That's the final one. Okay, click Save. All the ones had already been completed were the ones that I was working in the editor. They were automatically completed. But now all these ones are done already, and that project should be finished. So if we just come to Files, I can confirm on my side, yep, target has been generated, translation has been generated. So that means it should be going back to you, Patrick.
That is
so
true.
If I give you control.
Yep, pass it on back to me.
Where are you?
Oh, I'm Rafi. Yeah, just pass it back to
Rafi. Rafi's making his presence felt even though he's not here, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm back. It should be showing my screen. Can you see it there?
Yep, all's coming through nice and clear on my side.
Look, sounds good. All right, so we've gotten the content back. The job's been completed, so now we can just see that it's time to download these translated documents. Now, where I logged in as a regular user, I get an email that alerted me to this, so I wouldn't have to come and check this all the time. So once I get the email, I come in here and I do the download. easyDITA would then pull that content back in from XTM, and we can see we've got everything in good shape besides an image, which we don't do through XTM. And then we could go over to our publishing screen, and the publishing screen is going to let us go in and select the PDF. Now, I'm using the DITA Open Toolkit here. I'm actually using a pretty old DITA Open Toolkit. You can use any DITA Open Toolkit you want in easyDITA, any 1.x, 2.x. easyDITA is smart enough to use really any version of the toolkit that anybody is integrating with, and you just upload it. So I'm using some very old configurations, but that's okay. It'll work just the same. So now I'm just going to select that German translation, and I'll do a PDF, and then I'll click Publish. And this will take just a second. So it's running the full publish and the content. You could add as many locales to this as you wanted. So you could publish 10 different languages all at once, and they would all come back in a simple zip package for the user. Click Download here, and we will have our published PDF. So there's of course, I don't know German, so you can see the pieces that we did translate. You can also see what's happened here is that, so these are some of the things that we translated, but a lot of them we didn't translate, and easyDITA is smart enough to fail gracefully on that. So it'll go back to either the last time it was translated, or if there's no translations available, it will go through and set it up as being just the source language. Now, in this case, we marked some of the German in XTM as being done when it was still just English, so that's why that's come through in that way. But it is very smart in how it allocates those things, and it allows you to run the process very efficiently by publishing as many of them as you want, and selecting the most recent translations and just keeping that kind of running on an ongoing basis.
Of course, and from the XTM side, a professional linguist and translator would obviously not have totally ignored all the warnings that were thrown to them and actually translated all the content before they delivered it. So the whole process has its kind of QA checks in there. So if you are publishing and not all the content is translated, you're going to get the majority of what you have done. But if you pushed all the topics inside XTM, then nothing that goes through XTM should not come out translated at the other side. It all should be translated with the workflow. And of course, we changed the workflows on our side so that we could just process this. But there may be lots of different steps in your localization workflow, or your how you like to do QA on translation before it gets pushed back into easyDITA. That can all be done on the XTM side. So there's lots of things, but I'm sure we probably have a few people who are interested in answering some questions, or if there's any kind of feedback on maybe your processes that you're currently doing, that you have some questions on, we'll be happy to go through those.
Yeah, absolutely. So we don't have any questions in the question box yet. So if anybody's got anything they'd like to know, now would be the time to ask a question and we can respond to them. So while people are thinking, we just want to kind of go back through what we talked about today. The notion here is that what we're showing is a software package which is complete from a authoring, content creation, management, localization, and publishing aspect. And the reason that we feel this is really game changing is because this is software that organizations of any size can afford. And an organization of 25 people could afford to do this, and they could compete in the same way with the same content footprint as an organization of 2,500 people. So, at least in my opinion, that's pretty huge for a lot of the smaller organizations throughout Europe, maybe some smaller software companies that want to start selling their software as a service to a wider audience in the United States. Move into South America, start competing overseas. Okay, well, if there are no questions, then I guess we will just wrap up our webinar today. So thank you for attending. Again, my name is Patrick Bozick, and
I'm Dominic Kelly.
And we'll make the recording available online. So I actually forgot to start the recording until a little bit into it. So it means you're going to miss the company introductions, but that's not why you're here anyways. We're happy to do those from a personal sense if you guys want to contact us. So thanks again for everybody who attended, and hope to talk to you all soon.
Cheers, guys. Thanks.